Hello and welcome to Fusion Writing, where building character meets creating structure. And this is Tuesday, our map day, where we get to dive into the meat of our topic and really get to explore it. So I'm going to turn it right over to Victoria, because I can't wait to hear what she was talking about as alternatives to the antagonist. Victoria?
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So you may recall from yesterday's lengthy introduction that we're looking at other ways we can push and challenge our characters if we're not writing a conflict-driven story. So one of the things that I asked you to think about are different ways of a perspective shift. So you have to think of your character at the opening of your story as viewing the world in one way. So it doesn't mean that they don't have depth. It doesn't mean that you aren't doing that deep character development and research, but it does mean that you have to orient that reader somewhere in time and somewhere in the character's mind. So set up your character's values, their perspectives, do that pre-writing work so that you really understand where this character is coming from. This, my friends, is a great place to employ the character traits that one Miss Kathleen Spracklen has given you. Because by diving into those character traits and figuring out what's up here that maybe my character aspires to, and what's down here that's maybe holding them back or rooting them to something. And then start shifting those things around to discover how they're going to navigate their way through the story that you're telling. So back to the antagonist. Consider observations, insights, and meditations, which are the three things I gave you in the introduction. They could make an observation about the world around them or about themselves. They could have some sort of an insight or click in or key into something that maybe they didn't get before. Or perhaps they have some sort of meditation that causes them to take pause and maybe look at the world in a different way. Now, you might recall the example that I teased you with was, what if you use time as an alternate antagonist? Think about it. If you position your character at this point in time and space, so this is where they are today, what if, in order to challenge them and show growth, rather than throwing a conflict at their face, instead, they have some sort of a meditation on something from the past? See how that feels? Rather than positioning them and just pushing them forward into the story, you're positioning them, and then you're taking a flashback and using that as a way to show how they have made this shift, how they've reflected on the past, and maybe they've arrived at a new insight or a new observation. So that's one way. By using the past as an antagonistic force, you're able to show character development and growth without ever having to move into the story. You're just setting it up in that way. So then where would you go? Well, then you would move forward into the present, maybe show them digesting or processing whatever that meditative insight was, and then you're moving forward into the future of the story. So that's one simple way that you can throw in a time element that can emphasize your theme. It can show character development or growth, or it can simply move the story along. Maybe you use a flash cut. So you show them where they are, you reveal the thing you want to reveal, and then you jump forward, maybe a year into the future. In that way, now that character has to process that time jump, and so does the reader. So you can energize the story by showing that character in a completely different time and place. And then you're contrasting who they were with who they've become. See how that works together? Once you start to fit those pieces in and hang those pieces on the character trait and the character development, now you're writing a deep and rich story that your reader doesn't want to put down. And at the end of the day, that's our goal, is to keep those readers engaged with interesting discoveries, interesting challenges, not always conflict, just something that reveals and grows that character through the story. So that's where I will leave you today. Play around with what other things can I use to challenge and grow this character aside from just the standard conflicts? If you just ask your brain that question, I guarantee you're going to come up with some cool solutions. Just let your writer's brain chew on it for a while. But always thinking, how can I make these things serve revealing a better character and writing a better story? With that, I will throw it over to Kathleen.
Oh, how fantastic, Victoria. And I love how our work tends to dovetail. And you're dealing, of course, with alternate antagonists who aren't other characters. So that means that the character is dealing with himself or the physical world. And that very much leads us into the various character traits, as you implied. Well, meekness is a fascinating character trait because we have this conception that we carry with us that meek is a synonym for shy. You're retiring, don't want to put yourself forward, don't notice me. But it actually has something more technical about it. Now, of course, when we explore it, you'll see that common parlance come back up. But we're going to look at what is the actual thing that's going on in your character's mind that's showing up in this attribute of meekness. First of all, meekness has to do with where does the character place his attention? And in the victorious sense, in the non-chaotic sense, in the stable base sense, it means that the character is completely comfortable with themselves, is able to use their eyes to look outward into the world around them, observe the needs of others, observe the challenges of the situation, just observe that which is outside of himself without having a lens that he's looking through, which is like, and how am I doing? How are they seeing me? How am I being evaluated? Am I doing all right? Do I look okay? See, all of those things that are basic fears and insecurities that can block the character's ability to see out of his own eyes. And that is more technical definition of what's going on with meekness. So now sometimes I don't want to imply that your character has to be having all kinds of issues to be retiring, because of course we all have different personalities. And this is not the same as extroversion versus introversion. So you have to separate that out a little bit as well, because introverts tend to prefer to be quiet, to prefer some alone time, whereas extroverts tend to get their energy in a crowd and prefer to be more out there. So we want to tease apart meekness, because meekness is specifically about this filter that might get in the way of an accurate vision outward. And that filter is the self-doubt and the insecurity. So in a way, when you think about it, there's the old biblical proverb, I think it's part of the Beatitudes even, the meek shall inherit the earth. And everybody's reaction is, oh yeah, sure. And what was that joke song in Camelot? It's not the earth the meek inherit, it's the dirt. It's all really about this ability to not have to constantly be examining yourself. Now, if your character is out there in battle and he's wielding the sword figuratively or literally, if he's worried about am I gripping the handle of the sword appropriately, and am I swing at the right angle, it's going to mar his performance. And that is really what is getting more at the root of meekness, is the ability of the character to perform without being burdened by self-consciousness. And that will get you very, very much to handling meekness. Okay, so now let's take a look at the different voices and states of meekness, because we have always got three different voices going on. In the rudder position, you've got the voice of reason that's trying to give you advice. You don't see that too much in meekness. Usually, when you're hearing voices of meekness, they're challenging voices. Oh no, did I wear the right thing? Oh no, did my hair come out right? Oh no, oh no. Those voices are almost always voices of insecurity. And they're almost always indicative of something of a lost state, that meekness is up there in the wing position. So that will be a little bit of a challenge to listen to the voices of the rudder position. But when you realize that also meekness is about what you're giving your attention to, meekness has the interesting ability that amongst all of the character traits, you can call your attention to what you wish to call it to. It takes practice, and your character can practice with this as well. Think of the adage, stop and smell the flowers. What is that telling you to do? That's telling you to remind yourself to give attention to beauty in the world, because we can get so busy in our day that we just focus totally on what we've got to do, need to do, where we're going, and we don't stop and say, I want to give some attention elsewhere. And meekness covers that as well. So meekness has this interesting characteristic that although natively it almost never exists in that rudder position, we can call anything into the rudder position almost on demand. So this gives us a lot of opportunities in our story to give our character dimensionality. If our character suddenly pulls something into their attention, it's almost always believable because human beings have that capability. So it gives you a lot of power when you need to make a small change or a small direction, or where your plot has to turn on a dime. You can always have your character notice something and give attention to something that had previously gone unnoticed. So I'm going to turn it back over to Victoria because I think she's got some connections she can make to this. So Victoria, do you want to close us up with this topic?
Without question. It's just so nice that it always works out this way. Yes, you know that I love when we break down the difference between the common meaning of the terms and the technical meaning, which is how we use them for the character traits. But this concept of having that character notice something, or excuse the phone in the background, or something that allows them to grab onto making that change, that's huge. And not only that, but it gives you a much deeper insight into how to use those kinds of details, because you can pull from so many different areas to inform, as you said, that slight change of perspective or that slight shift. Just grabbing one of those threads and weaving that in order to show what that change or shift looks like, that's huge. And it doesn't have to be a bomb blowing up. It can be just a very subtle thing, like you said, reaching in and grabbing that one little detail and then using it as a way to pull that story through. I just love it. It's absolute beauty to see it done. But as a writer, it's even more fun to do it. So I would encourage everyone paying attention. Number one, dive in and play with this stuff, because it can be really fun when you start feeling your story and your characters change. And number two, and I think Kathleen has a note card for this, come over to LiLLiPub and join us, because we meet every Saturday for sprints at noon Central on the Zoom call. And then we do a workshop and we talk about these concepts and how to use them in your writing. So come and join us. It's open for everyone at this point. We would love to see you and hear your stories.
Yep, Victoria, thank you so much. Yes, come on over to lillipub.org for our fusion writing gathering. And as Victoria said, right now it's open. So it might not remain so. If we get too big, we'll have to think about limiting the membership. But right now it's open to you and it's quite affordable. So come on over to lillipub.org. See you there. Bye-bye.